Minus 370 favorite Topuria is to beat Charles Oliveira.
What?
Minus 370.
That is insane.
Charles Oliveira and Ilia Topuria are set to face each other at UFC 317 on June 28th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, and the odds makers have already started predicting this fight. However, the UFC legend Chael Sonnen was shocked to know that Ilia Topuria, who will be making his debut in the lightweight division, is the favorite to beat the former lightweight champion Charles Oliveira. He said it doesn't feel right that the former world champion, who defended his title 3 times and has more submission wins than anyone in UFC history, is such a heavy underdog. Sonnen emphasized that Oliveira deserves more respect given his accomplishments.
Minus 370 favorite Topuria is to beat Charles Oliveira.
What?
Minus 370.
That is insane. That is not right.
To be the world champion that defended 3 times, has more submissions than anyone in UFC history, and he's a minus 370 favorite.
Daniel Cormier emphasized that Ilia Topuria's greatest asset right now is his confidence. Cormier recalled a conversation with Josh Thompson, who pointed out that Topuria doesn't know how to lose, and that belief fuels his mindset. According to Cormier, Topuria's self-belief is so strong that he approaches every fight expecting to win, which is reflected fearlessly and dominantly when he competes.
Confidence is key. I think the biggest thing that Topuria has right now is confidence. And I told Justin and I were talking about that. He goes, dude, he doesn't know how to lose, so he's so confident that he can beat anyone that he goes out there and he fights in the way that he did.
Meanwhile, Charles Oliveira is also ready for this challenge and wants to prove these betting odds wrong. He is excited about this fight, is looking to knock out Ilia Topuria in their title fight. Charles Oliveira said he respects Topuria, but he has great confidence in himself that he is going to defeat the former featherweight champion. And Charles Oliveira stated, "I have nothing but respect for Ilia Topuria, but this is lightweight. I believe in my jiu-jitsu, but I believe that I could knock Ilia Topuria out." However, Ilia Topuria questioned Charles Oliveira's mentality, pointing out that having 10 losses affects a fighter's confidence. He said it's completely different to face someone with that many defeats compared to an undefeated opponent. While he acknowledged Charles is dangerous everywhere, like in striking and grappling, but he claimed that fighters who have never lost are mentally tougher and harder to break. According to Topuria, Oliveira tends to fold under adversity, often going to the ground and waiting for the fight to end.
Charles Oliveira, even this is what I was telling you before, like when you got 10 losses in your record, that's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 10.
Yeah.
Like when you walk in with a guy that has 10 losses, the level of confidence is completely different. It's completely different than when you walk in with a guy that it's undefeated.
Right.
He's a dangerous guy in the striking, in the ground game, everywhere you look at him, he's a dangerous guy. He never takes a lose. That's a different mentality. You gotta have to kill him to give up. He's not gonna even give up. You gotta have to kill him. In the case of Charles, if he finds some adversity, he's gonna go to the ground. He's gonna sit and he's gonna be waiting like till you end up the fight.
Charles Oliveira also shared his reaction upon learning he'd be fighting for the belt against Ilia Topuria. He described the excitement around him, and he immediately contacted his coach Diego to start the training. With 46 days until the fight, Oliveira said the belt should never have left his division and that they're ready to bring it back. He's focused on what he and his team can control, staying sharp and planning their strategy. Acknowledging Topuria as a tough opponent, Oliveira expressed confidence in his power and commitment to go all in, promising to reclaim the belt.
And everyone started yelling, the kids screaming and all that. Training had just ended and so on. I grabbed the phone, saw thousands of messages, went straight to Diego. That's it. Let's go. We're ready. 46 days. 46 days for this belt to return where it never should have left. We'll focus on what matters, stay sharp, and make it happen. I'm not fixated on their moves, but on what we can bring and take. My team will map out Tupula so we can plan our game. My focus is what I'll bring to the fight. We're more than ready and prepared for this fight, right? Tough opponent, but I know my power. I'll go all in fulfill my promise and get that belt.
On the other hand, former UFC champion Henry Cejudo believes the matchup stylistically favors Ilia Topuria, highlighting his explosive power, sharp boxing, and ability to mix up his attacks to the body and head. Cejudo praised Topuria for consistently knocking opponents out cold. He also acknowledged Topuria's toughness, referencing his fight at 155 against Jai Herbert, where he was dropped but showed resilience by coming back to score a knockout.
When I look at this fight, I think of this fight stylistically. I think, okay, the explosive power and the power in the hands, and it's crazy to say that. You have to go with more of Ilia Topuria, right? Ilia Topuria goes high-low. He can go to the body. He can go up top. He's been knocking people out cold. That means Max Holloway, 2 future Hall of Famers. He knocked out. None of those guys went championship rounds. We saw him one time at 155 pounds where he did get hurt against Burns, against Jai Herbert, but he got hurt, he got dropped, but the matador in him, he came back and he ended up knocking him out.
Henry Cejudo acknowledged that Charles Oliveira is the bigger and more experienced fighter at lightweight, having faced elite opponents like Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje. He praised Oliveira's effective wrestling, especially his double leg takedowns. However, Cejudo expressed concern about Oliveira's preference to fight at close range, noting that this style could be risky against a compact inside striker like Ilia Topuria. He suggested that Oliveira's tendency to engage up close might work against him in this particular matchup.
Charles Oliveira is the bigger fighter. Charles Oliveira has fought the who's at 155 pounds. I mean, everything absolutely changes, man, with Charles Oliveira taking down Michael Chandler, with Charles Oliveira taking down Justin Gaethje with those beautiful double legs. But I will say this, when I think of this fight, I always think of the distance that Charles Oliveira brings, and particularly he likes to be in close. And the fact that he likes to be in close with an inside fighter, it doesn't make sense.
Henry Cejudo emphasized that it's Charles Oliveira, not Ilia Topuria, who would need to make the most adjustments in a potential matchup, even though Topuria is the smaller fighter moving up in weight. He noted Oliveira has been dropped by top contenders like Chandler, Gaethje, and Islam. With Topuria's knockout power, Cejudo warned that if Oliveira didn't adapt, he could get finished, and Topuria might leave as a 2-division champion.
So now is one thing, the person that needs to make adjustments in this fight, typically you would say the lighter fighter, the smaller fighter going up, but not really. Charles Oliveira has been dropped by just about everybody that he's fought, from Chandler to Gaethje to Islam. I mean, what happens when you go up against a dude that's knocking people out, not TKOing people, knocking people out cold like Ilia Topuria? So when I'm looking at this fight, I'm saying Charles Oliveira is the guy that has to make those adjustments. If not, it's going to be the double champ. It's going to be Ilia Topuria securing himself as a 2-division world champion.
Michael Bisping broke down the potential matchup between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira, calling Oliveira a dangerous, aggressive fighter who's always pressing forward with strikes and submissions. However, Bisping noted that with Topuria's punching power, sharp boxing, relentless pressure, and Greco-Roman wrestling, it wouldn't surprise him if Ilia ends up winning the fight, even in his lightweight debut.
Ilia versus Charles Du Bronx Oliveira. We know Charles, he's a dangerous, aggressive son of a... He's gonna walk forward, punches, knees, elbows, he'll lock on a submission. Ilia, this is his first fight at lightweight, and with the punching power of Ilia Topuria, the boxing that he has, the footwork that he has, and the Greco-Roman wrestling, it wouldn't surprise me if Ilia pulls it off.
MMA Guru and Demetrius Johnson both shared thoughts on the potential fight between Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. MMA Guru called it a major pay-per-view event that didn't even need a belt to sell, though he expressed curiosity about how Topuria would look at lightweight. Demetrius Johnson highlighted that Topuria walks around at 191 pounds, making it surprising he ever made featherweight. Johnson said the move up is logical and added that he enjoys watching fighters test themselves in higher weight classes.
If Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira on a pay-per-view, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's gonna be a banger fight.
They don't need to wait for an interim belt. They don't need to wait for an undisputed, so yeah. I don't know how he's gonna do it lightweight though. Maybe you can speak on that. He's a smaller guy coming up.
It's a smaller coming up. It'll be interesting because he is bigger from when I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like 191, I think he was walking around. It's massive. So for him to cut to 145 seems almost like, how did he do that?
Yep.
But now that he's going up to 155, I always like when athletes go up.
Paddy Pimblett believes Ilia Topuria has a strong shot at defeating Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. He described Oliveira as a bit chinny, noting that after nearly 40 fights, he tends to absorb a lot of damage. While acknowledging Oliveira's elite ground game, Pimblett criticized him for being reckless at times. He also highlighted the often overlooked challenge of moving up from 145 to 155 pounds, suggesting that Oliveira, being around the same height as him, might not have a big size advantage, which could play a crucial role in a striking battle.
Ilia beats Charles then?
I think he might, to be honest. Charles is a bit chinny, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's had about 40 fights or something. He always gets punched. He always gets cracked.
Yeah.
So,
he's reckless, but he's super exciting.
Yeah, he is.
And he's dangerous.
Exciting. If he gets him down, I can see him winning, because that 10 pounds difference is a big difference.
Yeah.
145 to 155, it's a big difference. People don't understand that because they don't watch the sport or they're not involved in the sport. But that 10 pounds makes a big difference. And especially, like, Charles is like my height. Ilia's like down here when I stand up, know what I mean? So it's gonna make a big difference.
Paddy Pimblett said Ilia Topuria might get shocked by Charles Oliveira's size and physical presence. He pointed out that fighters moving up in weight often underestimate how big their opponents actually are until they stand across from them. Pimblett referenced his own experience, mentioning how Bobby Green and Michael Chandler looked much smaller on TV but were surprisingly solid in person.
Ilia might get a bit of a fright at how big Charles is when he stands opposite him. Fighters do that with me, who fight at lightweight. Know what I mean? I'll never forget Bobby Green looking over at me and being like, "What? He's big, him." Same with Chandler. Like people thought Chandler was going to be bigger than me, and he just weren't.
Islam Makhachev's coach, Javier Mendez, predicts Ilia Topuria will defeat Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. He told Tim Welch that if given $100,000 to bet, he'd back Ilia to win, though not necessarily by knockout. Despite this, Mendez personally hopes Oliveira wins, but acknowledges betting favors Topuria.
If someone gave you $100 grand to bet on that fight, who would you bet?
Ilia.
By knockout?
I don't know, but I would if someone gave me $100 grand and but if you're asking me who I would want to win, I'll put Charles. I'll put my money on Charles.
Yeah, that's who you'd want.
Yeah, so that's who I'd want.
Yeah.
But if you'd give me 100 to make 100, you know, if it's that type of even, like you get 100, you can make 100, I would put Ilia.
Javier Mendez explained why he believes Ilia Topuria will defeat Charles Oliveira in their upcoming fight. He highlighted Ilia's powerful inside boxing and his knack for landing clean shots as key advantages. Mendez noted that Oliveira often stands upright, making him a more accessible target for Topuria. He also mentioned that Oliveira will struggle to take Topuria down unless he can connect with knees or front kicks to the center. Although Oliveira has the reach and kicking ability to catch Topuria off guard, Mendez feels Topuria has more paths to victory.
Why else do you think you would pick Ilia over Charles? What is it about his skill set that you like more?
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and when he gets inside, he's going to use that boxing, and Charles' head's going to be up, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin on the inside. Really, really nice, just like what he did with Volk, you know. And I think if Charles doesn't get him up the middle with knees or front kicks up the middle, he's going to have a hard time with his boxing against him, and he's going to have a hell of a time trying to take him down. So it's going to be one of those where Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does. But Charles can surprise us with his length, you know, and up the middle would be really, really well suited for him. And the kicks too, you know, body, head type thing, you know, low, high. You know, he could do really well with that.
Javier Mendez also discussed the outcome of the fight if Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev had fought. He noted that since Ilia is moving up from featherweight, the fight might not favor Islam, but if the UFC arranges it, they will make it competitive. Mendez compared Ilia's toughness to Alexander Volkanovski and praised his technical boxing as likely the best in the division, making him a challenging opponent to prepare for.
If Ilia versus Islam goes down, how do you see that one playing out?
That one is, again, that's a super, super tough fight, you know, just because Ilia, you know, he's coming as a featherweight and fighting Islam, you know, for me, you know, it doesn't really benefit Islam to fight him, but if that's what the UFC is going to do, that's what they're going to do. but he's so tough, so tough. I mean, he's doing all the right things. What he's saying, how he's saying it, you know. But I see him as a tough challenge. He's to me like a Volkanovski type, you know, super tough. So you have to prepare for him. And the thing that's different about him is he has really good boxing. He has really good boxing. I've said it that I think he has the best boxing in the whole division, you know, and I know technical. I'm not saying striking, but boxing on a technical boxing level, he's pretty damn good.
Aljamain Sterling also cautioned Charles Oliveira about Ilia Topuria's striking power, warning it could lead to a bad night if Topuria lands clean shots. He pointed out that Oliveira has been dropped in past fights, and questioned how Topuria's power at featherweight will carry over to lightweight. Sterling believes that if Topuria secures a strong finish, he could become a two-division champion. Aljamain Sterling said, Charles Oliveira gets dropped every fight. We know Ilia Topuria can already crack at 145. What is that power going to translate at 155? And if he can touch Charles the way he hits everybody else, I think it's a bad night and Ilia is a two-division champion. MMA analyst Luke Thomas called Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria the best possible fight, but acknowledged that since it's not happening, Topuria versus Oliveira for the lightweight title remains very exciting. He described the matchup as fire and dismissed any opposing opinions. Thomas also expressed interest in Islam moving up to welterweight, eager to see how he matches up against fighters like Jack Della Maddalena, Sean Brady, and Khamzat Chimaev. Overall, he believes both paths offer thrilling fights for fans.
I've been very consistent about this. The number one fight that could have been made among all permutations was Islam Ilia. That's the best fight that could have been made. But the point I've been trying to make is that while that would be the most desirable one to choose, it's not like you're getting something bad even though you're not getting it. In other words, Topuria against Oliveira for the lightweight belt is fire. I don't care what anybody else says, it's fire. And then I've been saying this whole time, Islam going up to 170 and seeing how he matches up there with Della Maddalena, potentially Brady, potentially Rachmanov, potentially Gary, potentially Buckley. I mean, any number of ways in which that could go. That is incredibly exciting.
So that's all we have from today's video. Thanks for tuning in. The build-up to UFC 317 is heating up with Ilia Topuria entering as the favorite over former champ Charles Oliveira, something even Chael Sonnen finds hard to believe. With confidence, power, and plenty of expert opinions backing Topuria, plus Oliveira's determination to reclaim his throne, this lightweight title fight promises fireworks. Stay locked in as June 28th approaches. This is one showdown you won't want to miss.